Hi, welcome to another Small Business Pivots episode where we have special guests from around the world. And today we have a very special guest from St. Louis here in the United States. And she is going to, well, I don't want to ruin it because it's a great topic for all of our listeners. But I always say that business owners say their name and their company best and a little bit about them. So I'll turn it over to you to introduce yourself.
Hi, folks. I'm Mary Scott, and I want startup businesses to be wildly successful. I run a local warm, fuzzy shark tank called Pitch STL, and we've helped brand new businesses learn how to pitch and get the resources and contacts they need to get money from investors. I also put together a resources guide for startups in St. Louis. And I come to you from having done video production for 30 years in New York. So you have no idea who I know.
Well, I bet we're going to find out. So, well, let's just dive right in because I know as I kind of share, our listeners are small business owners. Many of them are stuck. And then we also have a percentage that are still wanting to start a business and they just haven't quite got the confidence or the plan or maybe the material resources to do that. So let's just start there. And where do startups start? And for those, the reason I asked that question, this is also relevant for our current business owners because many of them didn't get started the right way. So I'm going to turn it over to you to kind of share that.
Okay. First thing you do before you spend any money is validate your idea. That means ask people, do you think this is a good idea? Do a Google search to make sure nobody else has done this already or done this sort of that you can partner up with and maybe help them do it better. And it's not just, do you think this is a good idea to friends and family? Find potential customers. Ask them if this is a good idea. And more importantly, how much would you be willing to pay for this new idea? Because if you're not generating income, you're not in business. And this is something a lot of times people get just this so passionate about. They're so thrilled they've come up with this great idea and they're ready to start making and doing, and there's no market for it. So if you're okay with your business idea turning into a hobby, then go for it. But if you really want it to be a business that makes money, you must validate that idea in the first place.
I love when Mr. Wonderful always asks the people on the stage or the carpet there when they say, well, everybody's buying my widget, whatever that is. And he's like who? And they're like, well, my mom and my friends. He is like, they're lying to you. Those are your friends.
Right, right.
So that's very valid points. Anything else startups should be considering there at the beginning after
Well,
they validate?
the other thing is that maybe 85% of startup businesses are never going to need venture capital. They're not scalable. They just want to do a business, create a legacy, maybe something that kids can take over later, maybe just making enough money that they can retire happily. Maybe they're just want to do this and make enough money to cover costs or whatever. That's fine. That's a perfectly wonderful way to do a business. And the resources in your locality for additional lines of credit or business loans or additional vendor resources, you go to, first of all, you stop at your local library because you never underestimate the value of the reference librarian. These folks know not only the answers to questions, but they can help you figure out what questions to ask in the first place. And second of all, in most cities, there is something called an SBDC, a Small Business Development Center. They're usually located at a university. These are funded by the SBA and they provide free services. They provide access to government contracts, how to do a business plan, how to actually get started in business. So those are really good resources to start with that are totally free and absolutely worth your time. Also, once a month on the third Monday at 5 p.m. Central, I do a virtual workshop on how to set up a business for success. And it's all those check boxes you need to do to make sure your business is legal and getting started in a functional way so you stay out of trouble.
That's key, right? We don't want to get in trouble. We get in trouble enough. So,
Right. And
that,
I can share the link for that with you, Michael.
yeah, no, I appreciate it. I remember when I started my first business 3 decades ago and didn't quite know all the tax laws. But when they came knocking at my door, that was not the excuse they wanted to hear. They didn't, well, just
Exactly.
because
And
you
this,
don't know doesn't mean they're not due.
exactly. And this is part of anytime you're doing something new, whether it's a new relationship, a new business, new parenting, you don't know what questions to ask. So that's not good. That's not bad. It's just a fact. And if you can find people to help you get there, help you figure out what questions to ask so you don't get into trouble, that's really where you need to be.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I encourage our listeners, if you do have a business, you might be struggling because you haven't validated your product or your service yet. So go take this advice just like a startup would. And then once you mentioned video, so I see a lot of business owners, once they've started, they're playing with the website, they're making TikToks, they're doing this, that, and another when they should be out making sales, in my opinion. But what are some of those areas? You mentioned video. So what are some of those key areas that they should be focused on once they have a product that people will buy?
Well, to find customers, because people aren't going to work with you unless they know what it is that you do or where you are. So you need to figure out where your customers hang out. So for some businesses, TikTok is a great place. For some businesses, Pinterest is a great place. For some businesses, flyers at the grocery store is a good place. So you need to really know who's your customer? What problem are you solving for them? What kind of benefits do they get out of having had that problem solved for them? And that's going to help you figure out who your customer is and exactly where to do your marketing. The other kind of unfortunate aspect of being an entrepreneur is that you need to be okay spending 20% of your time doing the fun stuff and 80% of your time either doing or delegating all that back end stuff, the marketing, the accounting, the housekeeping in the office, the keeping up your databases. You're checking your return on investment. If you're spending hours on TikTok, how many customers do you get per minute that you spend on TikTok? Those kinds of things. That's part of the downside of entrepreneurship. My husband was a cameraman at a big TV station in New York City, and he loved shooting, getting those pictures, getting those interviews. He loved shooting, but he spent 80% of his daily work driving.
Hmm.
If he hadn't been okay behind the wheel and getting caught in traffic, he would not have made it as a TV cameraman.
Wow.
So that's part of the deal is when you're an entrepreneur, you're only going to be spending 20% of your time doing the stuff you love, unless you partner up with someone who really loves doing all that marketing, and then you can do.
Yep.
So that's how you got things like Steve Wozniak and Steve Jobs.
Yep. Yep. Yeah, that's good advice. So on the startups, you got to have money to pay for those outside resources. And I know that you talk about funding and you just mentioned
Yeah.
investors earlier. So what are the types of funding that a startup could use or find? Because most of the time they say, well, I don't have an established business. Where can I go get money to even pay for
Okay.
somebody?
Sure. First step is you got to have skin in the game. I wouldn't really plan on starting a business unless I had about a nest egg of about $10,000. Even for tiny little businesses that you're a coaching business that you're starting out of your home, there are going to be expenses for getting an LLC, setting up bank accounts, dealing with vendors, producing marketing materials, maybe going to conferences or places where you're going to potentially meet customers. There are going to be expenses in that first year or two. Startups are any business, in my mind, that are less than 5 years old. So your own skin in the game. And next, you would talk to friends and family and see if anybody else wants to give you a grant, support you. If you've got a product, maybe you can get some money from them in exchange for something you're going to do for them in the future. Yeah, friends and family would be next. Then if you're going for venture capital, your next bet would be something like a CDFI, a community development financial institution. The SBDCs in your space would know who that is. Often it's something like a credit union or a special economic development organization that is set up specifically to provide very small loans, like under $100,000 loans to startup businesses. And that to some extent will have to do with your own credit rating. But and sometimes all you really need is like you've got customers, but they haven't paid you yet, but you have people you have to pay. So that's where something like a line of credit would be very helpful. And there are banks that deal with small businesses more frequently than they're like specialized for smaller businesses. The bigger banks like bigger businesses. The bigger banks are places to go if you actually don't need money. If you can do it yourself, but you'd rather not, then you go to the really big banks. Institutional investors, sometimes you can get money from universities or government kinds of things. And then of course then you get into the levels of venture capital with ABC rounds and my niche is the early stage. So I farm people out to those things. Most communities have something called incubators or accelerators where you can do co-working with other startups and you kind of mentor each other. And then there are mentors there. And a lot of these folks come with grants between $25,000 and $150,000 for the year, as well as this program, as well as space to work, additional lab space. There's lots of different kinds of accelerators. So you look for those in your local community too.
Yeah, it's all about finding solutions, right? That's what entrepreneurship is. And I was just asked the other day, what is one thing that entrepreneurship has given you that you didn't know you'd have? And I mentioned outside of freedom, I knew I would have freedom, but outside of freedom, I said choices. Like the amount of choices we have as entrepreneurs that we have to make on a consistent basis. I never knew there would be as many choices as I've had to make in my career.
Yeah. You learn how to be cool with making decisions. You kind of learn leadership. If you're not a born leader, you become one. You learn collaboration, how to really utilize the best of the folks around you and build a good team. If you can build good teams, you're going to be much more successful than if you think you have to do it all yourself.
Absolutely. Well, we have so many topics we could talk about on startups, but one that's really important is your pitch. And I know that you've got a downloadable form on your website of how to create the perfect pitch in 20 minutes. So let's kind of visit that because I think a lot of business owners have a hard time telling their stories so that people understand what they even do so that I can buy from you. So let's talk about that for a few minutes.
I run a pitch competition and you have 2 minutes.
Oh.
2 minutes, no pitch deck. Essentially, everyone needs, people aren't going to buy from you unless they know what it is you're selling. And it has to be crystal clear what it is you're selling. So I tell people you need to be able to say this sentence. I help these people solve this problem so they can. I am uniquely qualified to do that because. If you can do that in 30 seconds, you can fill it all out with the whys and the wherefores and who those folks are. But I help inventors, product, and tech startups get the connections and the resources they need to validate their ideas, learn to pitch successfully, and get money from investors. I am uniquely qualified to do that because I've been working in the startup space for over 15 years. I've done video production and media in New York, so you have no idea who I know. And I really am good at helping you get all the right ducks in the pond before you put them in a row and take them out on the runway.
I love that. I love that.
And that's my 30 seconds. So be really succinct, be really clear about what you do.
Would you say this may be subjective? What about the company name? I know a lot of startups think forever on what the company name, and then I don't
Or
even
they
know
want
what
to
that
name
means.
it, Susie Smith's business.
Yeah.
It's when you try to pick a name, first of all, wine helps, but what you want to do is find a name that says what you do and that has a URL that's available. So when I had a video production company, I went through a whole bunch of different names, but we ended up calling it Make Believe TV. Because when we made TV, your audience would believe it. And makebelievetv.com was available. I'm currently using Business Riff because I like to use improv to help solve problems.
Hmm.
So it's like riffing on a guitar.
Yeah.
Or riffing in stand-up. If, Susie Smith's accounting.com tells you what it is, but susiesmith.com doesn't tell you anything.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
And just because it's like Tex Creo sounds like a cool name, but who knows what they do?
Right. Yeah. I've got a client, or we won't even say a client, but they were having some challenges growing. And I said, have you ever considered reassessing your name, the company name? And they're like, well, I've already got this and that. And I was like, okay, but that's holding you back, in my opinion. That's holding you back if you were to
Sure.
invest. So all of these points are valid even for companies that do have some history behind them. If you're struggling, take some of these things that you're talking about and go just check them out, apply them, and see if it doesn't change the direction of your business, because I think the name is very important. So the chicken or the egg.
You can look up other businesses in your industry and look at what kind of names they have. And in your own opinion, is this a good name? Is this not a good name? Oh, that sounds like something I could do too. You want to make sure that the name you pick is unique enough that you're not infringing on someone's trademark or copyright. But really importantly, you want the URL that's available. So when I did my Warm Fuzzy Shark Tank in St. Louis, I went looking we had a bunch of organizations in town that were short STL. We had Tech STL and Startup STL. And so then we had Bio STL. So I thought, we're doing pitches. So let's call it Pitch STL. And joy, the URL was available.
Yeah. Wow.
So yeah, the shorter the better, the more succinct the better.
And I know as an entrepreneur, when I was speaking about choices, yes, we have the choice to come up with the company name. Most of us want to be creative and not dull, but I assure you that legend has it with Amazon that Jeff Bezos originally called that company Cadabra, and his attorney said something to the effect, "What are you saying?" And he told him again. He said, "It sounds like you're saying cadaver. You may not want to use that name." And he said, "Okay, Amazon." And so his attorney asked him, why Amazon? He said, because it's the largest river in the world and I'm going to have the largest empire. I think he accomplished that, but that shows you the power of a name that
Sure.
even the bigger companies have had to reinvent or pivot themselves due to something that we don't know behind closed doors. But
Sure.
we're not all the next Google. And those that are Google's, they've got
Mhm.
venture capitalists behind them pushing that brand out there. So whether you like the
Right.
name or not, you're going to hear it over and over and over. So I just want to share that with business owners, as it's common that most business
Yeah.
owners want to have that creative name, but sometimes it doesn't work in your advantage. So let's talk about video. So social media, video, filmmaking, all that is right up your alley. So share a little bit on
Sure.
some insights that business owners need to know so they can be effective with their video.
Like anything else, it's got to be really short and really engaging. If you don't grab people in the first 10 seconds, you've lost them. So you can do that with enthusiasm. You can do that with interesting pictures. The other thing is you don't really need to get too heavily invested in things like equipment. Because if people are looking at your technical quality, then your content sucks.
Hmm.
That's kind of
Simply
how
said.
these things work. Yeah, it's got to be engaging. It's got to be thoughtful or impactful in some way. You know, I start things with I want startups to be wildly successful and I'm enthusiastic. And so people go, "Oh, let me get some more information from this crazy lady. She may have something for me." So, yeah, video can be daunting. You have to decide where you're going to be doing stuff. If you want to do quick little informational things for like the business community, you want to be able to upload videos to LinkedIn. And LinkedIn videos are landscape. If you want to show your cupcakes to people who can then buy you for the catering business, you want to be on Instagram or yeah, Pinterest, and those are portrait shaped videos. So you need to know where your audience is, what's your purpose of your video. Don't overthink it. Do it short. You can always delete stuff. You don't have to go live. You can edit it. There are softwares that are cuts only editing. You can even edit on YouTube. So those kinds of things have fairly short learning curves to be able to do those kinds of videos. Obviously, when I was in New York, it was pre-internet, so I had a big video toaster flyer lightwave system doing rendering 3D animations that would take an hour and a half per frame.
Oh my goodness. Wow.
So yeah, so I'm laughing now when people complain that AI takes long to render stuff. And I'm like, you guys have no idea.
Yeah.
But that's the point, is that if you're using gigabytes and gigabytes of information, it's going to take a while.
Yeah.
And speaking of AI, don't use it in video unless it really is showing something you need it to show. And if you're going to create something in AI, you had better have a paid AI account, or whatever you create is public domain,
Mm.
because the free accounts, they own the data, you don't.
That's good to know. That
Yeah.
is good to know.
Yeah, exactly. So, you know, you create this cute little character in a free account, and somebody goes, "Oh, I want that. I'm going to make stuffed animals out of it." And you are totally out of the picture.
Oh, wow. Well, speaking of AI and startups and early stage businesses, what are some of the AI tools or resources that would be beneficial for them? If you have any insights on that.
I really don't have great opinions about AI tools. It's sort of like content resource management systems. It's the one you're going to use. It's the one that works for you. I know people love ChatGPT. People also love something called Claude. There are new things coming out all the time. One of my buddies has actually created an AI platform where he has integrated more than one kind of AI software. So you can kind of do one-stop shopping and do, if you subscribe to his system, you have access to all these tools and one feeds the other. So, and there's one program that's particularly good at coding,
Mm,
dear AI, write me an app that does this. And it comes up with all the coding, which is contributing to the fact that folks who have or are going for degrees in computer science are not finding the jobs available because AI doing coding for companies is getting rid of a lot of jobs now.
mm, mm,
So yeah, but those are the kinds of things. It's everything has a learning curve. If you want to explore AI, do it, but set yourself a time limit. Give yourself an hour, 2 hours, set a timer, because you will go down a rabbit hole.
yeah.
And it does get real interesting. So it's about, well, what's your goal? Are you just playing, or do you want this to actually accomplish a task for you? And you discover that it's really talking to a computer. It doesn't intuit anything. And it also doesn't differentiate, unfortunately, between fact and opinion, unless you tell it that it should not use certain places as sources.
Mm,
If you tell it, I want to get biological information about these drugs, but make sure all your sources are from universities.
yeah.
You
Yeah.
know, you're going to get what they call hallucinations. And AI has no ethics built into it unless you build it in.
Right.
And it really doesn't know the difference between truth and fiction unless you tell it specifically what to look for.
So we've mentioned a lot of things about business. In your opinion, what's the one thing every startup or business less than 5 years old that's not quite making payroll consistently or
Mhm.
whatever? What do you think that one thing is they should be dedicating most of their time towards?
Talk to your customers, talk to the people who work with you. Be honest about, we have this issue, we have the situation. What do you think? What can we do? What can we do differently? Think about where you might try to expand or change your market. Be okay with saying that was good at the time, it's not working anymore. We have to do something different, even if it was something really near and dear to your heart. Just the other day, I was talking to a person who's trying to get a particular kind of grant. And the thing that she was most passionate about was absolutely not something this grant was funding.
Hmm.
But the processes she was using to accomplish that goal could be applied somewhere else that she hadn't done yet, but could. And that is the sort of thing that this grant would fund. So it was really going, yes, you're passionate. Yes, this is your ultimate goal, but you can't put it in those terms if you're going for this grant. So, it's like, okay, my client base is now a whole different folks from who I usually have as a client base. And how do I speak to them so they're going to hear me in the way that's good for them?
Yeah. Yeah, I've owned a handful of businesses, and I would say not one of them look the same today as they did when I started. So
Right.
be adaptable, evolve, learn from your clients, go sell. Like you're never going to have the answers until you
Oh,
get
yeah.
sales. So
Sure.
we're talking very big. Well, let's jump to your businesses. So what are some insights that you've learned? Because the show is called Small Business Pivots. So I know we all have to make pivots along the way. Any insightful
Mhm.
advice you could give just from things you've learned owning your business that might help others?
The biggest thing I've learned is to ask for help.
Ooh, yeah.
Wow, that was a revelation. I should have been asking for help way, way before it actually hit me. I also needed to not be so rigid in my quality standards, if you will.
Mm.
I didn't want to do videos online because they looked terrible back in the 90s. I didn't want my all the work I'd spent doing a high quality video get all pixelated and look terrible on YouTube. But had I not had that level of concern, if I had just gone for it, I would have been part of the folks who were into YouTube really close up, the first adopters, and I would have had a much bigger following by now because technical quality versus content. There was great content in the stuff I was doing. Um, so yeah, that was a pivot. And then the whole big thing when I used to have a philosophy that I didn't want my clients to pay for my services. I wanted their clients to pay for my services. So I didn't just shoot video for people. I actually gave the business advice about how you use it, how to you work it into your marketing plan, those kinds of things. So I've been given business advice for a really long time. And when COVID hit, I got, oh, hey, I don't have to carry around this heavy equipment anymore. Let me just do the consulting part of things.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that pretty much worked. I could get clients and give the advice without having to carry equipment and shoot video. And I've got people who know me nationally now. So
Yeah. So being adaptable. Well, let's talk about
yeah.
your website because it has a lot of good stuff on it. So just kind of refresh us now that we know a little bit about you and your
Okay.
experience. What can they find working with you? What all do you offer on your
I
website?
offer office hours, so once or twice a month. You can, if you subscribe to office hours, you can just pop into my office and ask me any questions you want. Um, I really want to know more about you so that I know which one of my vast resources is going to help you the most. I offer a free 15-minute phone call just to see if there's some synergy. I do workshops on Zoom that a lot of them are for free. I do speaking engagements for people. So that's the sort of stuff you see on Business Riff. And I also have a podcast just like Michael's, only mine is only 10 minutes. My podcasts are really short and they're advice, practical, tactical advice for startups. I always have a guest who's an expert in their field, and we just talk 10-minute tips of what you need. And I also love it when I get to talk to an investor because I find out what it is a startup needs to know or have ready before they talk to that investor.
Yeah.
So you don't go pitch a biotech product to someone who's interested in ag tech
Ah,
or fintech,
yeah.
financial
Know
tech.
your audience.
So yeah, you gotta know who your audience is. But this is the fact that I can get investors from all over the country to come on my podcast and talk to me. That's fun. And that's something that came out of the video too. When you're kind of a reporter, you have a backstage pass to the world.
Yes.
And if you're asking for advice enough from the right people, you ultimately end up getting money.
I think that caught everybody's attention.
Keep asking advice. If you send a fan letter to somebody in an industry, how many of you have ever gotten a fan letter? You're going to respond to that person. I often tell young people who are looking for particular careers to find someone who's doing that job. Offer to buy them lunch if you can follow them around for the day. It's a way of turning a cold inquiry into a warm introduction.
Yeah.
So yeah,
And don't be
don't be
afraid.
afraid. Go for it. What's the
Yeah.
worst that'll happen? They'll hang up or they'll ghost you. So what?
Well, we both
Yeah, you
said don't
don't
be
ask
afraid.
why, you ask why not. Yeah.
Yes.
Don't be afraid or do it scared. Be scared, but do it anyway.
Well, discomfort means we're growing. And when I started my very first business at the time, newspaper was big, and they always had the
Yeah.
business person of the week, right? On the Sunday paper, the business section. And I would reach out to them and just say, "Hey, I'm a new entrepreneur. I have no clue what I'm doing. Would you mind if I bought you lunch or something?" I never had one person turn me down. They love to talk
There
about
you go.
themselves and their
Yeah.
successes.
Yeah. And you learn wonderful things. You make great connections. Every so often it's a waste of time, but even that is kind of a learning experience.
Oh,
So,
absolutely.
yeah.
I don't know if
Yeah.
any of those that I didn't learn something, because I always say as business owners, we don't know what we don't know. So talking with others, you always learn something, in my opinion. So how can most people follow you? Is the website the best place, or do you have other places, social medias, YouTubes, anything?
You can follow me on LinkedIn. You'll see my podcast if you subscribe to the LinkedIn. I'm on Facebook. My website is businessriff.com. There's always fun stuff happening at pitchstl.com because we post the podcast there, as well as we post other people doing their pitches. So you'll get to see sample 6-minute pitches at pitchstl.com. So that's a good one for startups and possibly people who are in a similar industry to yours. So those are all good places.
Well, I'm sure you've piqued the ears of interest for many, and they're probably going to go sign up. So I always try to end with one last question, and that is, if you were in front of business owners, different sizes, different industries, what's one last piece of applicable advice that would be beneficial for them? It could be a simple as a quote or a book, or maybe something else that you learned.
Have fun.
Huh?
If you're not having fun doing what you're doing, why are you doing it?
That's it. If you don't want to have fun, go get a job, right?
And if you're really concerned about things like health insurance and where the next month's money is coming from, you need to be working for somebody else rather than yourself, because you are probably going to be the worst boss you ever had.
Yeah. Well, you may or may not agree with me. I think once you become an entrepreneur, you're the worst employee ever. Like, I could never go get another job because I would be the worst employee.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
I notice there's like three different kinds of entrepreneurs. They're the ones who are born that way and they're absolutely unemployable.
Yeah.
And they're the ones that have been working for somebody long enough and they get downsized and there's nothing they can do but kind of start their own business. Those are the reluctant entrepreneurs. And then there are the ones who are so busy making something and putting it in the website and making something else and doing it on an website and, oh my God, I got a business. Those are the accidental entrepreneurs.
Yep. Yeah. Accidental entrepreneurs. I love
So you
those
got
descriptions.
innate, reluctant, and accidental. Understand who you are in that system.
And there's
And
no
and
perfect entrepreneur.
and you need to, find the resources you need, ask for help, and have fun.
Absolutely. Well, Mary, you've been a blessing to many. Thank you so much for your time and your insights. I wish you continued success.
Thank you. Pleasure being here, Michael.
Thank you for listening to Small Business Pivots. This podcast is created and produced by my company, Boss. Our business is growing yours. Boss offers flexible business loans with business coaching support. Apply in minutes and get approved and funded in as little as 24 to 48 hours at businessownershipsimplified.com. If you're enjoying this podcast, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and share it as well. If you need help growing your business, email me at michael@michaeldmorrison.com. We'll see you next time on Small Business Pivots.